The Detroit Pistons have had an amazing postseason for how young of a team they are. They are currently down 2-1 in the series. We haven't talked about them since game one, so we'll go back to game two, which is when the Pistons ended up beating the Knicks 100-94 in Madison Square Garden. Cade had 33 and 12. Schroeder had 20. Harris had 15 and 13. Um, and it was just a pretty solid win. Brunson at 37 and 7. Cat didn't shoot well this game or shoot much, honestly. He only had 10 points on 11 shots. Bridges had 19. OG only had 10. This just wasn't really you look at the box score, and it doesn't really look like either team had a great game. But the Pistons just they played better. They won the game in Madison Square Garden, which is something I did not think was going to happen, especially in these first two games. I thought it was going to be super hard for them to win in the Knicks home stadium. So I thought the Knicks were going to go up 2-0, but the fact that they stole one on the road is a pretty big accomplishment. And then they almost had on Thursday, they almost had it again coming back. The Knicks won 118 to 116 in game three. The Knicks are now up 2-1. Brunson just doing his thing. He almost had a 30-point triple double. Cat had 31. Mikhail had 20. OG had 22. A lot of scoring from the top four players for the Knicks. And then, on the other side, 24 and 11 for Cade, 24 from Tim Hardaway, 16 from Jalen Duren. Just again, eh, but it's been a good series. It's been a super physical series. I think we've seen an altercation or, someone get in someone's face every game so far. But no matter how this ends, whether the next two games the Pistons get blown out by 30 points and they go home in five, the Pistons should be so happy with how this postseason went. I mean, and if we date back, if we go way back to last season, they were 14 and 68, I believe. Horrible. I mean, you almost lost 70 games, or maybe they were 16 and 66. I don't know. But it was awful. They went on the 30-game losing streak, the longest losing streak in a season. And, you got that moment from Cade saying, yeah, we're not 30 wins in a row bad or whatever he said. And I mean, he was right. I mean, it was a pretty, legendary time because, legendary for a bad reason, but they started off that season 2-1, and then they just lost and then they ended up being like 2-30 or something. It was such an insane moment. But then you come back to this year, they fired um who was the I can't remember who their coach was last year. I'll look it up. But in the meantime, they fired their head coach. They brought in JB Bickerstaff. Um, They brought in JB Bickerstaff and they improved by 30 wins, to get into the playoffs without having to go through the play-in. And the yes, so they were 14 and 68. Monty Williams. Yes, obviously. I forgot about that. Monty Williams was their head coach. They fired him. They brought in JB Bickerstaff, who came from Cleveland, I believe. And he turned them around. They got guys like Tim Hardaway, Malik Beasley, Tobias Harris for, I think Malik Beasley's of like a vet minimum. Um, Tim Hardaway, I don't know what he signed for, but then Tobias Harris got a decent amount of money, not his like max that he had been getting from Philly, but you know, excuse me, it was a good amount of money. And that's really all they needed to get into the playoffs. I mean, when I was going into this year, there excuse me, there was no way that I thought they would have been a top 6 seed. I was like, "Okay," they were a 15 seed, they were dead last in the league, not by far. The Wizards had 15 wins last year, but which is insane too, by the way, because Detroit went on a 30-game losing streak, and they almost weren't the worst team in the NBA. So the Wizards, man, are but they're doing their thing now, the Wizards. I like the direction that they're headed. But, you know, you get JB Bickerstaff and you get these veterans. Not It's not like you signed Kevin Durant, it's not like you traded for Carl Anthony Towns, it's not like you acquired a Jimmy Butler or anything like that, and you gave Cade some spacing, and he was able to operate way better than having to kick the ball out to Jalen Duren and Asar Thompson and people like that. Instead, he's got Tobias Harris, who, say what you want, he's got bad contracts before. That's not his fault. It's his agent doing a great job, and then the team over, I guess, estimating what they were getting from a Tobias Harris. But Tobias Harris has been in the league for 10 years or more than 10 years. He's been close to being an all-star. Say what you want. In Philly, he was a 20 or he was close to 20 points per game for Philly in 2020, 2021. It went down a little bit. I mean, even last year he was a 17. And so he's been close to, being an all-star. He's played almost 1,000 games in the NBA. He's at 970, and he's been a starter for, a good amount of those games. So Tobias Harris is a super like great, reliable player. Oh, his cousin is Channing Frye. That's something I didn't know. But back to Cade. Cade, he was a number one overall pick. I'm sure, as a lot of you have seen, he is the one of the finalists for most improved player, which, Cade's had a great season, but I don't think any of us agree that a number one pick should be in most improved, because he is finally getting to the level that people think he is supposed to be. And it's not me saying that he didn't improve, because he did, but most improved to me is to guys like a Pascal Siakam, or guys like a I don't even, when CJ McCollum, Jimmy Butler, Giannis won it. These guys, they weren't top picks at all. I think Giannis maybe was the highest pick. I think he was 15th, but Giannis was not looked at to what he is now. But they win this, and then they become into an all-star or a super valuable player, maybe like a Zubac, or his teammate Norman Powell, who wasn't on the list, or even Dyson Daniels, how he's rejuvenated his career into what he is now at such a young age. But he averaged 26, 9, and 6 in 70 games played, which is great. And he's been a great, like, his rookie season, 17, 5 and 5, only 64 games. Okay. His sophomore season, he got injured. He only played 12 games. So, and he averaged 26 and 6. And then last year he played 62 games. He averaged 23 and 7. So, and now he's sure he has improved, but I think his team has improved. And so he's able to do more. I think a lot of people have opened their eyes to Cade Cunningham and what he's done this season. And he's going to be, he keeps on this pace, he's going to be a top 12 player, top 15 player in the league. This season, I think he has been around top 10, but if you're taking out the people who have been injured and didn't meet the 65 game threshold, but it's just great. But again, the Pistons should be happy. They won a game, and they made the series be competitive through the first few games, which, sure, you didn't win. You're a lot of, it was kind of surprising how many people were picking the Pistons like confidently over the Knicks, because I think the Knicks obviously are just a better team. They have more good players than the Pistons do, but then you can see a thing like, oh, look at the depth. Obviously, we know Thibodeau and the Knicks don't have great depth. Thibodeau doesn't love using his depth either. He loves riding it out with his guys, and I think all these guys like Mikal, OG, Josh Hart, all those guys is ideal for what Tom Thibodeau wants to do. But the Knicks are just getting outplayed, and the fact that they're up 2-1 it's lucky for them because they could very well be down 2-1 going into, still being in, Detroit for this game 4, but I think they should be happy no matter how this ends. Obviously, would want to win, maybe get it to a game 7, but if you lose in 5 and you get blown out, I mean, you weren't even expected to make it here. I think I probably would have had them at the beginning of the season, maybe being an 11 seed. Maybe they sneak into the 10 seed. But no, they missed the playoffs completely and or the play in and they got into a playoff, so they got a guaranteed series without having to touch the play in. So, and maybe you could say maybe it's because Orlando was hurt and things like that, but that's only maybe one team. And I was confident that the Pistons could beat any of those teams in the play-in, whether it was Miami, Chicago, or who was the last team? Miami, Chicago, or Atlanta. I think that they could have beaten them. So great season from the Pistons. I can't wait to see what their off season looks like because I mean I assume you bring back Malik Beasley, but I think they Jaden Ivey is the real question here because right, Jaden Ivey's been out for a while. He only played 30 games this year, and he didn't have he had a good 17 4 4 41% from three. Again, it's a smaller sample size, but I don't know what his future is. I don't know if maybe they bring in another guard. Maybe they somehow get like a Devin Booker. They put Devin Booker with Cade next to each other, and then you've got the defense of like Asar Thompson, Tobias Harris, Jalen Duren, and then maybe Jane Ivy's like a super six man, or maybe Jane Ivy has to probably go out in that trade, honestly. But I don't know what his future is, and it's unfortunate when situations like this happen where player gets injured and the team just takes off without you, even though you're one of the better players on that team. It's kind of what happened with the Rockets at the end of last year. Sengun went down and Jalen Green for like a month and a half straight averaged like 32 points. The Rockets almost made the play in without him, and some people were like, "Ooh, is Sengun doing, whatever?" And then I think the same thing happened last year, the year before when John Morant went down and, Scottie Pippen was the, starting point guard. They were like, they're doing better than with Ja out, which again, in those cases, it's ridiculous because those are Ja and, Sengun are all-star caliber or superstar caliber players. But, and Jaden Ivey obviously hasn't proved that yet, but it's, I'm just in, I hope they go after a higher scoring guard or maybe a wing because again, I don't want Osar Thompson to come off the bench. So maybe if you get like a small forward, maybe he goes up to the two, or maybe he slides down to the four, depending on Tobias Harris and what they want to do there. But they have things to look forward to, and I can't see what they do with it this off season.